Truganini. In 1812, on Brundi Island, Tasmania, the daughter of Chief Mangana was born, and her name was Truganini. Little did anyone know the history of the Aboriginal Tasmanian people would coincide with Truganini's life. She would face much tragedy early in life, which also continued throughout her life. Before she turned 18 years old, her mother was killed by whalers. Later, her fiancé was killed while saving her from being abducted. And in 1828, her two sisters were kidnapped and taken to Kangaroo Island and sold as slaves. Before the arrival of Europeans, Truganini was immersed in her traditional Tasmanian culture and rituals. Lieutenant Governor George Arthur arrived in Van Diemen's Island in 1824. He set bounties on the Tasmanian men, women, and children. His next move was to befriend the people so he could trap them in extermination camps. The irony of the situation is that Brundi Island was the most peaceful part of Tasmania. In 1830, there were only 100 living Tasmanians in the world. Truganini and fellow Tasmanian named Woolwordy were moved to Flinders Island by George Augustus Robinson to protect them from extermination. George Augustus Robinson was known as the protector of the Aborigines, but his intentions did not help a number of the people. Many of the people died from influenza and other diseases because of poor conditions and close quarters. Truganini would help George Robinson to create a settlement for her people at Port Phillip in 1838. Around 1840, Truganini and other Tasmanians would begin to fight back against the European terrorists posing as civilized settlers. Their band were able to kill 2 whalers at Watson's Hut and also injure other settlers in the fight. Truganini and her band were labeled as outlaws and pursued to be convicted for their crimes. They were eventually captured and tried and hung for their actions. Truganini suffered a gunshot wound to her head but survived the ordeal. Her wound was treated by Dr. Hugh Anderson, and she was then sent for trial for her role in the killing of the European settlers. The trial was held in Melbourne. She was convicted and sent back to live on Flinders Island with other Tasmanians. In 1856, Truganini and her fellow Tasmanians were forced to move from Flinders Island to Oyster Cove. By 1861, there were only 14 living Tasmanians in Oyster Cove, all of which were adults. Truganini was eventually moved to a settlement in Melbourne where she would have a child from John Shugnow. The couple had to hide their child because Truganini and other Tasmanians were still being exterminated. Eventually, Truganini was captured and exiled from her people. Her daughter was living with the family of John Shugnow of the Kulin clan. Truganini was the last survivor of the group forced to move to Oyster Cove. She would die years later and be buried at the former female factory at Cascades, a small division of Hobart. Truganini knew her death was near and requested that her death be a respectful and peaceful one. She did not want her remains to be put on display in museums when she died. Her wishes were kept for 2 years until her bones were exhumed and placed on display by the Royal Society of Tasmania. Truganini was not the last of the living full-blooded Tasmanians, but she became the most famous. She was known for her traditional Aboriginal necklace and bracelet, which was returned to Tasmania in 1997. Stories like this one and others are often hidden from us and intentionally left out of our history books. We must start asking ourselves, why are stories like Truganini's and others intentionally kept hidden from us for so long? But most of all, we must find these stories and expose them to the world. Truganini was a brave woman who faced every type of hardship one can think of, but she never turned her back on her people or abandoned her tradition. Truganini, we proudly stand on your shoulders. For more information, please visit www.ontheshoulders1.com.